So we finally got to see the differences between a Switch 1 and a Switch 2 cartridge, because as you know, of course, Switch 2 is compatible with Switch 1, but Switch 1 is not going to be compatible with Switch 2 games, right? You can't pop a Switch 2 game into a Switch 1. It's not going to work. And there's always a way that Nintendo kind of goes around these things to make it so the new console is backwards compatible. It can pop in the previous console's cartridges, but not the other way around. They did this in a number of different ways with different consoles, from the Game Boy to the Game Boy Advance, and then of course from the DS to the 3DS, and we'll talk about all that here in this video. But if you do enjoy this content, this kind of content, be sure to leave a like, subscribe for more. We do a variety of Nintendo-based content, from news and guides and walkthroughs of games. It's a good time to do a little bit of everything Nintendo-based, and I'm excited. I'm excited for the Switch 2. We got the, of course, Mario Kart Direct in just a couple days at the time of recording this. Maybe you're watching this after the Direct, so really excited about that as well. We're going to be covering that and everything else. Switch 2 leading up to the launch and post-launch. It's gonna be a good time. Let's go ahead and jump straight into this. I wanna first start by comparing some of the old ones to see how they kind of did this and sort of the progression throughout the years. Let's start with the Game Boy. So if you see the Game Boy is kind of like a square cartridge, and then with the Game Boy Advance, it was kind of more of like a little bit of a wider sort of and shorter kind of cartridge, and that made it so, number one, the width of it could not fit into the Game Boy slot on the back, and then also the kind of shallowness of it also made it so even if it was not wider, it couldn't fit into the cartridge slot on the back of the Game Boy. And what that did though is it allowed the Game Boy cartridges to be able to slot in perfectly on the Game Boy Advance, because of course, you know, it was able to pop in. It stuck out a little bit, but it was able to pop in. And then with the 3DS and the DS and the 3DS, they did the same thing. With the 3DS, there was sort of like a little like notch, a little extra notch, I guess, if you will, on the cartridge that was not there on the DS cartridges that were a little bit more kind of square. And that was kind of a way to both differentiate visually from, you know, the difference between the two cartridges. And then of course, a way to prevent people from popping 3DS games into their DS console, because again, the pins are a little bit different slightly as well, I think, if I recall correctly. Don't quote me on that one. Anyways, and then finally the Switch. We got information about that. Where did we get this information? Well, from Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour. This image has been floating around the internet. I don't know where the original poster is, but either way, it's been going around the internet all over the place. Maybe there's multiple posters, but you guys can see an image on screen, which shows you that, first of all, there's a difference in colors, of course, right? So that's one visual cue. You can see that one's black, the Switch 2, cartridges are black, and then the Switch 2 cartridges are red. But not just that, you can actually see there's a little notch, kind of like the 3DS, but like way more subtle than the 3DS. The 3DS was a little bit of a different kind of notch. This is more of like an indentation in the actual bottom. Well, if you're looking at it, I guess like from the back, it would be the bottom right corner of the Switch 2 cartridge. And again, you can see that little indentation, and that's how to tell the difference between a Switch 1 and a Switch 2 game cartridge. Now, what that's going to do, again, as well as it's going to prevent you from popping in a Switch 2 cartridge into your Switch 1 console, because again, the Switch 2 games are not going to play on the Switch 1. Even if you could pop them in to the Switch 1, they wouldn't play. They wouldn't work. So, you know, they got to make sure that there's that differentiation. It's not to sell consoles or anything like that. It's specifically because the Switch 2 games will not work. You know, they're not backwards compatible. It's kind of like the same thing, like, you know, with discs. If you were to pop, let's say, like a PS5 disc into a PS3, let's say, it's not going to work. Right, it'll just give you a reading error, but this is just another way that Nintendo just prevents you from actually popping it in. So you don't waste your time. They're saving you time, really. You know, you should thank them for that. But yeah, so I thought it was interesting. Not a long video, but I want to show you guys that there is like an actual difference. There is a little notch in the Switch 2 game cartridge. It's not just red, which is cool, by the way. I like the red cartridges, but yeah, there's a little notch in there. It's small, it's subtle, but it's there, and that's one of the differences. So let me know what you think in the comments below. For everything else Nintendo and Nintendo Switch 2, keep locked on the channel and check out all the other videos that you may have missed, because we've been covering a lot of topics and there's a lot to talk about, surprisingly, and there's going to be more to talk about leading up to launch and, like I said, post-launch. So keep it locked until the next one. Game on. Thanks for watching. Catch you guys later.